Today I want to talk about how to get into West Point, the United States Military Academy. Um, Back when I was in high school, um, I was lucky and successful to get into West Point. So I kind of want to go through some of the process of what I went through to see if it's something that you're thinking about and how you might be able to do this sort of thing yourself. Now, first off, there's a bunch of stringent requirements in order to get into West Point, or any one of the service academies, like the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, the Coast Guard Academy. So any one of these requires a certain amount of work beforehand before you'll even have a chance of getting into one of these academies. First thing you need is a decent grade point average. I was lucky that I had almost a 4.0. I had one B in one class, so I think it was 3.9 something or whatever it was. And so I had a pretty decent grade point average. Now I understand grade point averages are a whole lot different now because they're gone on to the student college achievement levels for college, so now your grade point average can be something like 8.0 or something ridiculous. But back in the day, it was 4.0 was your highest that you could actually get to. And I graduated third in my class with basically almost a 4.0, but like I said, that one class where I got a B. So I met the requirements there because it's pretty hard to get a decent grade point average. And somebody who gets like a 3.0 or just B's consistently or what average out to B's, you're going to have a much harder time getting into it, and so you're going to need one of the other attributes in order to get into West Point. Now, West Point just doesn't put you in based off of your grade point average. You also take the SAT, which needs to be a certain level. Mine was pretty high, so that kind of got me into it. So those two numbers together were very useful. Some of the other requirements for it are extracurricular activities. Now, these can be all sorts of different things. Like nowadays, I see a lot of students who seem to be participating in, government court or government tutorships and stuff like that, to where that gives them a decent standing and kind of like where they are with extracurricular activities. For me, I was actually part of the Rockwell International Research Center. It's been so long that it took me a while to remember what it was, which was really a fun opportunity that some students are actually get. I don't know if Rockwell is even around anymore, or if they still offer something like this. But basically what it was is you went there, you worked on whatever project was being worked on at the time. The project I was working on was something they were going to be sending up to the space shuttle, and we're sending up on the space shuttle and then tested at the International Space Station. And it was basically a project where we were separating metals and kind of seeing, what happens during, zero gravity to see if they provide any different kinds of results. And this has all sorts of applications, but that's what they were testing at the time, and that's what I was working on. So that was my extracurricular activities. Some of the other things you can do are sports. Some people are like, really, really good at sports and tend to do quite a few of them. Well, the more you do, the more it kind of adds up when you're doing your application. I was on the track team for the school. I wasn't very good. I kind of sucked at it, but I was on the team, so that kind of helped, in the evaluation process. The other things that are actually necessary in order to get into it is you need to get a nomination from either the vice president, which is a special program in order to get into the academies, a senator, or a Congress member. I got one. I got one from a Congress member, and the process for that was pretty interesting. I'll talk about some of the beliefs that people have on what you need in order to get into West Point or Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy. And some of them are basically misinformation, because people think certain things and then make requirements that don't need to be there, and then don't even apply because they don't think they fit those specific requirements. But so when I applied, I got this notice that says, you know, you need to come to, was it Oxnard? I think it was Oxnard. And I had to travel down there, didn't have a car, so I actually had to have a taxi drop me off down there because it's the only way I could actually get down there. So I ended up having to get there on my own. And when I got there, I should kind of share something with you that I probably haven't shared before, even on my site. I'm a really, really good judge of people. I can walk into a room and I can tell you exactly what's going on based on the faces and the mannerisms of those specific people, which helped me years later when I went into counterintelligence, but that's a story for another video. But so when I went in there, and you know, they told me to sit down, it's me around this circular or half circular table, and they're all sitting on the other side of it, and I'm supposed to be sitting in the middle of it. And so I took a look around at the people in this room, and I immediately knew they weren't going to give me this position, that it wasn't even going to be offered to me. And so, knowing what I knew and not blowing any chance whatsoever, because I had no chance whatsoever, I kind of threw a temper tantrum and told them I knew that the position wasn't going to be given to me, that they had already decided to give it to somebody else, and this was just a formality. And I walked out. I was like, screw this. And so, got another taxi, went home, and didn't think another thing of it. The next day, I got a phone call at the house saying there was a bit of a problem. Could I come back because they needed to talk to me again? And so I kind of went off on them on the phone again because I was like, look, I had to take a taxi to get to where you are. I'm poor. I can't afford to get there. I don't have the money to take another taxi, and it's not worth, you know, my time to go down there just to have you tell me no. But, you know, make yourself feel better about it. So then they said, what we'll do is we'll send a car down to pick you up, and that car will take you home after we're done. And I went, okay, had nothing to lose. And so that's what happened. They sent a car down to pick me up, drove me to the place where this interview was supposed to take place, and I sat down, and there was nobody on the other side of the room. It was kind of really strange. And then the door opened, and it was actually the congressman. And he sat down across from me, and he says, you know, you were right. He says, I had agreed to give the position to somebody else. Oh, I should mention, I was applying to be in the Naval Academy, not at West Point, because I thought it was going to be, you know, this great naval captain. And I didn't apply for the Air Force Academy because my eyes were too bad, and I knew that I would never get in. So I was going to go to the Naval Academy. But he had given the Naval Academy to somebody else, I guess, you know, a close friend or somebody who was just much more qualified or something to that effect. But then he goes, would you accept West Point? And I said, sure. Didn't think anything of it. And so I ended up going to West Point because I got that. But there were other requirements before I could actually get there. Now I mentioned my glasses and my eyes. My eyes were really bad. Or bad when it comes to getting into one of the service academies. And so I had to get a bunch of waivers in order to do it. So my eye doctor and my regular doctor sent all sorts of waiver paperwork to the academy. And surprisingly, they accepted me. And so I ended up going to West Point. Now when I arrived there on the day that I was supposed to go through the whole intake thing, Well, I went to, it's kind of like this triage of all these doctors and everything that they have to do to check you off to make sure you're okay. But because I had a bunch of waivers, I had to go through this specific cadre of doctors. And I remember the last doctor, as he was talking to me, saying, I've never seen anybody come through here with 5 waivers. Congratulations, young man. You've done a great job. And I got into the academy, and that's kind of how it took place. Now, having said that, there's a lot of misnomers and misbeliefs about what you need in order to get to the academy. Like, one of them is you need to be rich. You don't have to be rich. Although, I will say, a lot of the students there were filthy rich and came from very rich families. Some of the other students that were there, who I met and talked to and spoke to, and found out they were like sons of senators, sons of generals. I mean, huge, backgrounds and huge families where I definitely didn't line up with, because I was born poor, and I knew I was poor, and I knew I was never going to get in there if they didn't accept somebody who wasn't rich. Well, they did, so you can get in. It's just a little bit harder. There's other things I thought you had to be, like I thought you had to be a super athlete in order to qualify. If you weren't rich. Now, don't get me wrong, there were super athletes there. I just didn't happen to be one of them. But it isn't a requirement to get there. You just have to kind of meet the gamut of requirements in order to actually get there. My other thought was you had to be brilliant, because I'm thinking, Patton, MacArthur, these kinds of people, Eisenhower that went through there and who were brilliant people. But that's not necessarily the case either, because I spoke to a couple of people who were there who I kind of went, wow, how the hell did you get in here? And so that was kind of surprising as well. Now, all of those 3 false beliefs, like I said, people fit into a lot of those categories, but quite often didn't fit into all of them. And I didn't fit in, I thought, into any of them. I mean, I was kind of smart, but I didn't think I fit in enough in order to get in. But I got in. And what this means is you can get in if you apply yourself. But you have to apply yourself early. Because if you decide during your senior year that you're going to go to the academy, unless you are some super, brilliant person or super, athlete or whatever it is, chances are you're not going to get in. So I would recommend, if you're thinking of going to West Point, to the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, or the Coast Guard Academy, that you apply yourself early. I would look into it at least by 10th grade. By 10th grade, you should be trying to make sure you've met every qualification that they have. And start looking around in case you have to get waivers to figure out where you're going to get those waivers, so you don't get them at the last minute. You might try it by the time you're in the 11th grade, but then you're really kind of shooting yourself short. So I would recommend starting in the 10th grade. If you missed the 10th grade and you're watching this video while you're in the 11th grade, you could still make it, but you're just going to have to really, really apply yourself during those last 2 years. Anyway, that's my thought on getting into any one of the service academies. It's possible, but you got to work and apply yourself in order to get into it. But like I said, you've seen me, so anybody can get in.